I think I'm a racist, and I really don't want to be it, but I can't help it sometimes. Wherever I go, it's the same thing. Immigrant guys that stand and stare at you, smoke, and spit and yell at each other and other people. It gets so tiring so quickly, and it doesn't matter where in Sweden I am, it seems like it's the same problem. I understand that people here sometimes may be tired of reading stuff like this, and I understand that this can be a bit of an echo chamber, as I've noticed it under the years on this sub generally is pretty right wing, but I need to vent somewhere. I couldn't come up with a better place. My friends aren't much help. Half of them have given up hope, and the other half would be upset if they heard what I actually had to say. But that's the way it feels, helpless. So frustrating. In Sweden, people like I get blamed for thinking something is bad with the current situation. It's guys my age who get jumped, that get robbed. It's girls my age that get harassed. Everyone knows it, but they don't say anything. A lot of people I know that are extremely left wing have experienced the same thing, obviously. But it's like they're closing their eyes to it. Ortenkillar, I guess ghetto kids, I don't know, something like that. Sometimes they just say guys. It's guys' problem that it is like it is, and I'm too naive to think that that isn't the case. I mean, you said invandrarkillar here before, so it's like you're also saying guys to some extent, but yeah, I suppose you say invandrar as well, but they say like ghetto guys. I don't know what the difference is. I'm tired of having to watch to be careful with who I look at the city, on the public transport, on the public transport. I'm tired of being associated with those type of people just because I'm a guy. I'm tired about hearing and reading about shootings, sexual assault, gang violence, robbery, and assault. To later close my eyes to the problems. That's the best thing Swedish people do, right? Just close their eyes. You're naive. I have under the summer traveled around different ghettos, I guess, in Sweden, where I've spent time as a small boy, um, and everyone was nice there. They used to be nice there. Smaller communities I've been used to. Basically, saying that he's traveled around a bunch of small places in Sweden, and he notices that there are those immigrant people there, and he doesn't like it. What I want to say is that it obviously isn't race. It's not a race problem. Whoever thinks it has to do with race or ethnicity is nothing else than stupid. That's not what I'm trying to say. There are immigrants all over the world who do really well, but in Sweden, it's going to shit. I would have been a social democrat in this country had that be better, but I can't figure out what the reason is. I don't know what to do about it. I feel frustrated and bitter. Sure, I could live my life, and I'm going to, but I can promise I would have been a lot happier if I didn't have to worry about making eye contact with the wrong person, being stabbed if I stand up for myself when I for the 50th time get called fucking sweaty, and I know that there are more people that feel like me. I don't want to be a racist. All people are good in the like in their heart, and are just as much worth as I am, and I don't want to judge anyone by how they look, but sometimes I can't help it. At least he's venting his feelings, I suppose. I can't tell like where he lives, what his actual experience are. I'm going to assume that everything he says is true because it could be. As an aggregate, Sweden, at least relative to a lot of other countries, doesn't have too high of a crime rate. Depending on like what specific like field you look at, I suppose. But compared to like things like the U.S., for example, and even other European nations, I don't think we do super poor. But we have seen an increase of crime in immigration, and I'm ready to acknowledge that. Obviously, what is the reason for this? I understand like the situation is in. Obviously, that the things you're describing are obviously horrible, and it's not a good like I guess things to find acceptable that this type of violence is like taking place and stuff like that. But just identifying a problem without trying to think of solutions, which this person's not done in their text, is not good for any process ever. Like just generally when you're looking at things and like just for yourself and for other people, if you're just focusing on the problem and not providing any solutions, you are doing nothing but dooming, and leading yourself towards, I guess, like intuitively incorrect answers in most cases. So why is it that there is a higher crime rate amongst immigrants here in Sweden? Well, it's a lot of different things. A lot of them I have detailed in a document of mine. I was about to document myself, but let's try not to do that. Where I talk about the situations that immigrants here in Sweden are in, basically. We already know, this is unanimously agreed upon, that the reason for people committing a disproportionate amount of crime, it can be two things. It can be genetics, or it can be socioeconomics. There is no research, and there will probably never be any research, indicating that genetics have a significant impact on people's proclivity towards committing crimes, especially not ones that can be extrapolated towards a certain ethnic or racial group. And there certainly isn't any evidence now, so we should operate on the evidence that we have. And if it's socioeconomic, that means it's something that can be addressed through policy and through changing the environment. And if we look at the environment of immigrants right now in Sweden, they're not in a good environment. They come from war-torn areas of poor socioeconomic condition. They come here to Sweden. They're not given proper integration methods by which to get into society. It is way harder for them to get a job just by virtue of their name sometimes. They are segregated, not directly, not like you have to go there, that's the only place you can live, but indirectly through economic pressures towards living in poor areas where a lot of other newly arrived immigrants are. And through this process, because there's like only like a few places, a handful of places where these people can live, they do form parallel societies and they do form a distress for society because they basically just, hey, come in and now fucking deal with it, you know? That's another like big part of the reason. Ethnic discrimination in a lot of ways is also relevant when it comes to the role of other policies we have here in Sweden, like for example, our education system. Education, I believe, is the primary predictor for crime here in Sweden. And we have seen a significant decrease in the quality of education throughout the past 30 years, I would like to say. Probably 25 would be most accurate. This is exacerbated mostly in poorer communities or more vulnerable communities. And as I've already stated, immigrants disproportionately make up those communities. So if you have a school system, for example, that is awful for giving everybody, especially people from like worse socioeconomic conditions, a chance to succeed and a chance to attain a proper education to build a livelihood, when those things are compromised, then your socioeconomic condition gets worse, you don't have a lot of places to turn to, and you engage in criminal behavior. So the education system has a massive thing to do with this. There are a bunch of smaller things, like for example, credential translation that could be used to make things a lot easier. Wage subsidies can be looked at. We need a general improvement in the integration. Things that decrease the proclivity of people to engage in in criminal activity, such as, for example, legalizing cannabis, is something that is very necessary, and it's something that should have been done in Sweden a long time ago, frankly. And that would take up a lot of the base income from a lot of gangs here in Sweden, which would be just a unanimous positive thing, because if it minimizes the sort of, I guess, the positives of seeking a criminal lifestyle, then people are less incentivized to do so. That's how incentives work. Housing is a really big thing, obviously, because we need to provide good quality housing all across Sweden so that immigrants are actually able to live more spread out, not be basically like coerced into living in certain communities with other people who are also in an economically fucked like condition. Housing which is cheap, is affordable, maybe even free, publicly owned housing, or are like leased at a very, very, very low price. And all of this together would increase the condition of immigrants in Sweden, their socioeconomic condition. And through this, we know that we will see a decrease in crime, because that's what all sociological literature has ever suggested. Now, there has been research indicating, a lot of people are going to say culture. Well, you could talk about culture, and what is culture part of? Genetics or socioeconomics? No research for genetics, socioeconomics. If we can do something about the socioeconomics, then we can do something about the culture. But even beyond that, there has been research taken on the role of culture in crime. And here's a study of 2013, so fairly recently. And it reads as follows. We examine the gap in registered crime between the children of immigrants and the children natives Swedes. We follow all individuals who completed compulsory schooling during the period 1990 to 93 in the Stockholm metropolitan area, up to their 30s, and analyze how family to origin and neighborhood segregation during adolescence, subsequent to arriving in Sweden, influenced the gap in recorded crimes. For males, we're able to explain half and 3/4 of the gap in crime by reference to parental socioeconomic resources and neighborhood segregation alone. So just by controlling for 2 socioeconomic variables, albeit very significant ones, that being parental socioeconomic resources and neighborhood segregation, they were able to explain half to 3/4 of the crime rate in males. For women, we can explain even more, sometimes even the entire gap, just reference to those 2 socioeconomic variables. In addition, we tentatively examine the role of co-nationality or culture by comparing the crime rates of randomly chosen pairs of individuals originating from the same country. We find only a small correlation in the crime of individuals who share the same origin, indicating that culture is unlikely to be a strong cause of crime among immigrants. So that's the culture argument pretty much demolished. It's socioeconomics. We know this. This has been known for decades. You want to look at an example of immigration being done right? Look at Germany. They put in the proper investments They had the proper systems in place, they took the proper government action, and as a result, they have done an excellent job with integration and being able to accept immigrants into their nations. In some cases, immigrants even have a lower crime rate than what the native population has. They participate greatly in the economic structures, pay taxes, are net positive for the economy. Germany has done it really well because they put in proper integration programs and they had a system that was built in a sustainable way that is able to do these type of things. In Sweden, through the privatization of a lot of our core sectors, such as our educational system, we have undermined our ability to do so. And through weak leadership by the Swedish government, we've also seen a reduction in the ability for us to be able to integrate immigrants and deal with this in a proper way. So, to answer your question, it makes sense. This is a general human trend. You will look for patterns. That's how humans work. And the fact that you posted this at least illustrates that you want to talk about it, which is a good thing. But you need to understand the cause and you need to propose a solution whenever you discuss a problem. Otherwise, you risk leading people towards incorrect conclusions. I've talked about causes to this and solutions to this. And if you keep that in mind, then we know how we can progress and move forward when it comes to dealing with this issue. The right-wing parties, they don't have a solution. Their solution is just to get rid of them. That's the solution. Just deport them again, which is awful on a moral, on a pragmatic when it comes to just the money of like just deporting all these people, and a nightmare logistically, and an economic negative also, because properly integrated immigrants are some of the most valuable assets one can have to their labor markets. I understand the situation you're in. The associations you've made make sense because humans look for patterns. Hopefully, this explanation makes more sense and is able to like give you a better understanding of the topic. Don't believe the lies of the right-wing parties who say that this is an inherent issue with immigration. Germany did it in an excellent way. We just need to tackle the problems most effectively in the best way possible. And proper left-wing, economically egalitarian policies are the solution by which we do so. And that will lower crime rate, increase social cohesion, decrease segregation, and have a whole load of different negative downstream effects, positive downstream effects, sorry. Not only on immigrants, but on society as a whole. The reformation of education is going to help immigrants and native-born people alike. So, yeah, there you go.